11th. Well, today we have a very special treat. Mike McCann, who is the author of Give Me the Hudson or the Yukon, is here with us today, so stick around for that.
Good morning, Melissa.
Now, the book you wrote, Give Me the Hudson or the Yukon, is a collection of short stories based on your life in Alaska, but you actually grew up in New York, so that probably explains part of the title, Give Me the Hudson.
Yeah, the title came long after the book was put together. It's about two-thirds of it about living out on the Yukon River in the village of Tanana, and then by writing stories about living there, it took me back to my childhood when I grew up in New York and did as much as I could to get on the Hudson River, you know, which was a whole different theme because there were skyscrapers in the background and tugboats trying to swamp us, but it was still a great big river and exciting. You know? So
you've always had a love for the river.
It's something about when you break down, you can still keep traveling. That's what I liked.
Right.
You know? Out in Tanana, what I stuck with was I always went upriver, so when I broke down, I could drift home. That simplified it. I very rarely went downriver unless I was up for an adventure.
Really, getting back upriver wouldn't be as much fun.
I did it a lot. I paddled or pushed up the banks quite a bit in the first year, and I learned that upriver was the place to visit.
Now, what brought you up to Alaska?
Actually, I graduated at Montana State University as a registered nurse, and I wanted to work in rural communities, so I went into northern Canada, and there was hassles with work permits and all that, and I got so involved with spending time with a lot of these old-timers out in the Cree Indians out in the villages and just socializing and having adventures traveling with them, so I then I decided I needed a pilot's license, and I wanted to come over to Alaska and work as an RN. It was a lot simpler being a U.S. citizen.
So is that what you did in Tanana?
That's how I ended up in Tanana, yep, as an RN. They had a small hospital that closed down in '81, and the hospital closed down, and most of the people left, but I really liked living out on the river, so I stayed. Yeah.
So are your short stories a reflection of the time that you've spent in Tanana and in Alaska?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely, the first two chapters or two sections are about the characters. It's hard to believe how many really colorful characters come down that river on canoes and doors and anything that floats, and those are the people that really stuck with me. You know, they stayed with me.
Right.
We got into all kinds of things, and then just some of the local characters in Tanana. There's a lot of colorful people out in the bush.
What was the population when you lived there? Do you remember?
It was pretty big when I got there. The hospital and that White Alice site was in full gear, and it was about 450, I think, but it started shrinking after the hospital closed. And then the White Alice site also shut down. So now I think it's down to 250. Yeah.
Great. And when did you leave Tanana?
I actually left in late '84. And then I had a one-year-old son, and we wanted to go somewhere a little more populated to give him a little more exposure as far as schools and stuff.
Right.
But I really missed the river. I missed a lot of the people, and that made me write. And I didn't write to market at all. I wrote to preserve some of these characters in my mind, and then also to pass on to my kids. And it was I got whiplash because I was selling stories, and I thought it was, I couldn't believe it, to different flying magazines, because I got a lot of flying stories in there. And
because you're a pilot as well?
Well, I wasn't so-called a real pilot then. I had an old plane I pulled out of the woods and was flying, but I wasn't what you call official yet. But I didn't have time. I was busy hauling pigs. There's a story about hauling a load of pigs out there, and that was that was the first story I ever wrote, and it sold to 6 magazines, so it took off.
You were hauling pigs?
Yeah, a crazy friend of mine that decided that they needed to raise pigs in the village called me in Fairbanks one time and asked me to bring a load of, he just said bring a load of bacon, or pork, he called it, but when I went out to pick them up at McKee's, they were still alive, so they filled up the plane and made a real mess, but I mean, a noisy crew, so to speak, and it was an adventure. You know.
And you brought the pigs down to Tanana?
I flew them to Tanana. I had to go up to 12,000 feet to put them to sleep. I had to cut off their oxygen supply, but when I got to the runway, I was so frustrated with these pigs, I just let them all loose, and everybody got to meet their new pets, you know, by chasing them up and down the runway.
Did they want them for pets, or did they want them for food?
No, a lot of people were talked into raising them for their winter bacon, and they ended up being pets, a lot of them, but they had to grow some serious hair, because at 50 below, a pig is a little bit thin on hair, you know, but that was one of actually the pictures on the back, me hauling a load of pigs there. And then That was in the first edition of the book, I mean on the cover, but I had to put a new cover.
You're on the front of the cover now.
The new cover looks like this. I've added more stories. I added one about the Iditarod. In '82, we were real involved with putting mine from this town named Stanza Ray. I flew along and kept an eye on him in the race, and that was pretty adventurous or fun.
Now the title on there also says a collection of mostly true stories. So is there some little white lies in there too?
No, I think what it is my perspective. I don't want to have the longer I lived in the bush, the less I claim to understand, so I don't want to have the final opinion. You know, we get writers up here for 3 days and they write the big final word on Alaska. And I think this is my recall and my perception, and I don't want to take credit for any final word. So that's why I put the mostly in last, because it was a few years ago, and that's the way I remember it, you know. And I tend to have a different view on things than a lot of people, so I didn't want to lay claim to having the only view.
Did you write these stories right after the events happened, or are these something that you did in later years?
No, I told them for a few years, and then people would say, oh, you gotta write that down, but I never passed an English class growing up in New York, and so I really didn't take that seriously. But I made tapes. I made 10 hours of tapes, and somebody, a hospital lady, takes dictation. She typed it up, and then I went from there and just expanded it. And they're short stories, 3 or 4 pages, and some of them are up to 12 now. I've worked on lengthening them, but I bore myself real easy, so that's why they're kind of short. You know, I get real tired of them.
Do you have some stories also about being a nurse in Alaska? Some of
these are bush nurse stories, not very many. I kind of take medicine, you know, unless as a private thing with the patients. If there's something really funny, I'll kind of skirt around it,
right.
But I respect people's privacy. This is mostly just fun stories about colorful characters that get into all kinds of mischief, you know. They say the definition of a true adventure is the end result of disorganization and misplanning, and I think we had a lot of that out in the bush, you know, and that's what made it a lot of fun. And people are enjoying it. I've sold almost 8,000 copies in the last year and a half, which really kind of shocks me.
Now the book is here in Alaska. Is it throughout the rest of the United States too?
It's in the Northwest and Montana, and then New York has quite a few out there.
But you started out by selling your stories to magazines?
Alaska Flying published a bunch, and then mostly Flying magazine, Western Flyer. Alaska Magazine did the pig story, Outdoors. Quite a few of the local magazines did it, and then Heartland did some, and we Alaskans printed a bunch of mine. Yeah, I'm still in shock from the whole thing, because they're using the book in my English class back in New York, and that's really wild. That's revenge at its best. My English teacher's in shock now, you know. But the kids are enjoying it, and it's just a fun collection, you know.
Of Alaska stories.
Mostly, there is a third on New York, which are really wild subway stories and all kinds of that stuff that we carried on with as kids, but most of it's Alaska, yeah.
Great. Well, if you'll stick around, we'll be right back with Mike McCann. So stick around, Mike McCann will be right back.
When it comes to spending less, shop now at Liquid.
The Hudson or the Yukon, which is your favorite?
Well, that's rough. At night, I kind of like it on the Hudson, but in the daytime, I just want to be on the Yukon, you know. Meaning New York at night would be just fine, but it's kind of a long commute, so I don't push it. But I do spend a couple weeks in New York every year.
But now, actually, you live in Homer, where if you're not really on a river, you're actually right on the ocean.
Yeah, on a big body of ice-cold water year-round.
That's right.
Yeah, I call it the Malibu of Alaska. We have a big bed and breakfast down there, so we get a lot of visitors from the interior. But I really miss the Yukon. I spent 2 weeks in June this year up here, down around Galena, and I really miss that river.
Are you practicing as an RN down in Homer as well?
Part-time. Only when it's real busy, they call me in, because like I say, I get bored easy, and so I don't want to sit around there. But it's a nice little hospital. Well,
are you still writing stories? I mean, or is this it? Are you going to keep putting stories together? Are things happening as the years go on that you want to write down?
I still got a lot of stories from the Yukon. I have about 30 more stories that are ready to be bound up for this fall, hopefully. and on the market by Thanksgiving. But no, they say I just keep coming up with more of them thinking back. And then I was up staying with Joe Runyon out in Indiana, and we were hashing over old times because he used to live out in the village with us, and they just keep coming. I don't know whether it's a, part of the remember and everything kind of expands or whatever, but it's just like unlimited.
Well, really it's a gift because there's a lot of people who try forever to put things down in words and just never can. So, the fact that you can share your experiences on the Hudson and on the Yukon and now down in Homer.
Yeah, the fact that people enjoy it, I enjoy writing it. If they enjoy reading it, I'll keep it up, and that's the way it's been going.
You started writing it for your children?
Yeah, I didn't want them to miss out on that, and I figured if I got old and foggy, I'd be telling them stories that were so discombobulated that they think I was, just gone. But I actually have, like I said, 10 hours of tapes, because to me, growing up in New York and then making it to Tanana was like going to camp with no counselors. We just really enjoyed it out there. And it's just so at ease. I mean, it was like a whole another century, And so I just wanted to preserve it. And when I put it on tape, I didn't even plan to ever work on it, But people say, oh, you got to work on that story or expand it. So I took it as a challenge. But unlimited material, I think, in the bush. In Homer, I don't do so good because it's kind of, you still got the highway musketeers, I call them, the pavement people
right.
that, they don't take that final jump, the people that get 600 miles down to Yukon or you meet out in Nome, I mean, those people, they have essentially jumped off the high dive, And down in Homer, if they live a few miles out off the end of East Road and they don't have electricity, they think they're going to fall off the planet, I figure that's Bodette's country. He can write about those guys, the vegetarians. And
right.
So I hope to get some stories, but right now it's kind of... I joke about writing a book about my bed and breakfast. I was going to call it Feed 'em and Frisk 'em, because we have 300 guests a year, and some stories come out of that, But I'm still focused on the characters from the Yukon.
Well, I imagine running a bed and breakfast, you probably have quite a variety of guests, people coming from all over.
The other day we had a convicted felon that was supposed to be doing time and was out for good behavior or something, and 2 nuns, and that made a real interesting breakfast because nobody knew what the other one did. And by the end of the dinner, he was asking for their, the blessings and stuff. But yeah, you never know who I say, for 3 months, I never know who I'm going to eat breakfast with, But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Homer's a beautiful place to live anyway.
Yeah, like I say, I call it the Malibu of Alaska. It's... in the winter, it's a good place to write because it's so slippery in the winter that if you go out, you're guaranteed to break something just trying to get to the post office, so you're better off to stay home and write.
Just about anywhere in Alaska seems to be an adventure in the wintertime.
Well, there it's warm, so it's slick.
Right.
I work in the hospital, and more people get hurt trying to get from their vehicles to the up to work, which is about 50 feet. The rain washes the sand off, so the sand all goes back down to the beach, and then the people are slipping and sliding. But it's a little too warm, really, for Alaska, I think.
Do you think you'll stay in Alaska?
Oh, yeah. I tried to leave for a year and a half, went to Montana in '85, and it was just way too civilized. Too many fences, I think, If you're flying along and you got to land, you're going to hit a fence somewhere, So I like it up here where you can there's always a place to land.
When you left New York and you went through Canada, ended up coming up here, was that in your plans? Did you think, well, I'm going to go to Alaska and live and stay? Did you think of staying here, or was it just, well, let's try this for a while?
No, I had planned to see every place in the world. I was about 21, and I decided that Alaska was on the way, so I was definitely going to see it. But I was actually wanting to work in Australia. My plan was to get my flying license up here in Alaska and then work in the outback in Australia. But Alaska was a lot bigger than I expected, and there was just so many different scenes and cultures going on. I thought this is going to take a while. I'm going to be here for a while. But I always say I came to Alaska for 2 weeks 18 years ago. That kind of explains it.
I think that happens to a lot of people. They come up here to visit and end up staying.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's just unlimited entertainment, and there's always something to do. I always say it's kind of like being in New York. Up here, you got to keep moving just to stay warm. Back there, you always got to catch a train or something. But there's a good pace up here.
And there's a lot of people coming up through here and giving you material, I'm sure, for your stories.
Yeah, one of the main characters, if we have time, do we have time?
Sure.
This Armin Kachikin, he came paddling down the Yukon one day, and I had some salmon cooking in a little rock pile, and so I called him in, and him and this other buddy, a friend of his, was from Yugoslavia, and so they needed some work, so they helped for a couple of days, and then they went on down to finish their trip down to Yukon. They came back and stayed with me for a little while, and this friend of mine, Stan Zaray, who lives out in Canada, he sat up late one night telling Armin about his last winter running the Iditarod, and Stanley won Rookie of the Year that year. The next morning I get up and Armin says, tomorrow I get ready, I'll be the first Armenian on the Iditarod. And I went, oh no, Stanley's been talking to him, so I knew we were in for another adventure. Anyway, Armin went back to Italy, went on a game show, and I'm sure it's not to tell the truth, but it was something, and he came back with $50,000 and rented dogs, went on the Iditarod. It was complete chaos. One of the marshals said to me later, how come you talked him into that? I said, it wasn't me, it was Stanley. He got disqualified on the race. He had to stay around and run it again. Anyway, years later, a couple years later, he was a major influence in getting the Alpenrod started, you know, so that all started one night late in my kitchen down on the Yukon. So that's the kind of things that can get going, you know. It's amazing, these little places are just catalysts for really colorful adventures, you know. But that's one that stands out. And then just Stanley being in the Iditarod was kind of wild. And there's a story in here, it's called Race Time, and it's a whole story about me sponsoring Stanley in the Iditarod. And that's a longer version. It's 12 pages, but for me that's a novel. But it's one of my favorite stories.
Oh, keep holding it up. And
Stan Zaray is one of my favorite characters, so I have a lot about Stanley in here. People keep calling me from around the country, and they'll say, "Where's Stanley? Where's Stanley?" Because they get so attached to him in the book, you know.
Where is Stanley?
He's in Tanana.
Okay.
He's not, I won't say a diehard, but he's got the endurance.
Well, Mike, keep on writing. Keep writing those stories.
Keep reading.
Like
I'll keep writing.
They're pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in this morning for Good Morning Fairbanks.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for Good Morning Fairbanks today. I hope you have a great weekend.